What if I told you that most of the thoughts you think aren't even yours? That every decision you proudly claim as your own, every opinion you defend, every gut reaction you have, was quietly shaped by forces you never chose? Sounds dramatic, right? Maybe even a little paranoid. But it's not paranoia. It's just how the system really works. From the second you took your first breath, the world began sculpting your mind. Schools taught you how to behave, not how to think. TV shows spoon-fed you values. Social media told you who to admire and who to cancel. Even your idea of freedom might be nothing more than a pre-approved illusion. Behind it all are subtle psychological triggers, carefully placed to keep you in line, not with chains or threats, but with silent, invisible influence. You were trained to obey without knowing it, to follow the script without realizing it was written for you. And the worst part? You believed it was all your choice. But here's the truth. Your beliefs, your tastes, your fears, your dreams, many of them were never truly yours. They were installed, engineered, not by some cartoon villain in a tower, but by everyday systems around you. Culture, advertising, authority, all working together to mold your mind before you could even defend it. Welcome to the real world, not the one you were shown, but the one Audio Bridge is about to reveal. Ever notice how you're always just following? Ever wonder why the news is constantly drenched in negativity? Why scrolling through social media always leaves you tense, annoyed, even angry? Why big brands push trends that somehow make you feel like you're missing something, unless you buy what they sell? It's not some random glitch. It's a system built to control you without you ever noticing. And if you don't snap out of it, you'll spend your entire life being manipulated like a puppet, never realizing your strings were being pulled from the start. But that stops now, because in the next few minutes, Audio Bridge is going to show you how to take your mind back, how to spot the invisible wires, and how to finally think, truly think, for yourself. There are hidden strings tugging at your thoughts, shaping what you believe, how you react, and what you chase. But today, you'll learn how to think sharper, move faster, and stay one step ahead of the crowd. Just know this. Once your eyes are open, you can't close them again. Once you understand how the system manipulates the masses, you'll never fall for its illusions like before. And that kind of awareness, it's powerful, it's dangerous, because people who can't be controlled are feared. So, if you're ready to stop living on autopilot, if you're ready to become the kind of person who questions, challenges, and leads, then don't blink, because what you're about to learn might just flip your entire worldview on its head. Picture this. You walk into a courtroom, but the case on trial is your own mind. The prosecutor, your deeply rooted biases. The defense, your stubborn ego. And the judge, supposed to be you. But let's be honest, you might be the least qualified person to judge your own thoughts clearly. Sounds intense? It should. Because every single day, without realizing it, you're making choices driven by old emotions, hidden beliefs, and blind assumptions, many of which were never truly yours to begin with. Your mind, it's a brilliant illusionist, a master manipulator. It can convince you that whatever you're thinking must be the truth. Just because a thought feels real doesn't mean it's true. That's exactly why arguments online spiral out of control. Everyone's so sure they're right, but almost no one pauses to ask, what if I'm wrong? That question alone, it's the first crack in the wall of lazy thinking. People who never question themselves stay trapped, locked in a mental loop, repeating the same ideas again and again, never realizing they might be completely off base. Let's bring it closer to home. Ever caught yourself in a belief so strong, you couldn't even explain why you believed it? Ever had that gut feeling someone was lying, and later found out they were actually telling the truth? Or assumed someone was ignoring you because they didn't text back, only to discover their father had been rushed to the hospital? That's not intuition. That's your brain filling in gaps with guesses, not facts. And the terrifying part? You do this constantly. But here's the breakthrough. You can actually retrain your mind to stop falling for these mental shortcuts. The real question is, do you even want to? Because once you start doubting your assumptions, there's no going back to cozy ignorance. And trust me, ignorance might feel safe, but it's far from harmless. Ignorance might feel like peace, but real power comes from clarity. And here's your wake-up call. Chapter 2. Your brain is lazy. If you're imagining your brain as a flawless, logical machine, I've got some bad news. It's not. In fact, it's kind of lazy. And that laziness, it's quietly wrecking your ability to make smart choices. Here's why. Your brain hates working hard. Every time it has to think deeply, it burns energy. So instead, it hunts for shortcuts. It jumps to fast conclusions. It clings to whatever feels right at first glance. That's why you might fall for ever trusted a smooth-talking liar over someone who struggled to get their words out but actually knew what they were talking about. That's your brain cutting corners again. It's the same reason you keep thinking the way you always have. Because changing your mind? It's tiring. It takes work. But here's the real twist. Your brain isn't just lazy. It's overconfident too. It acts like it knows way more than it actually does. That's why people argue fiercely about things they barely even understand. Notice how suddenly everyone becomes a finance expert when the markets crash, or a political genius every election season. That's not insight. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. It happens when people who know the least think they know the most. And if you're thinking, that's not me, well, that might be the Dunning-Kruger effect working on you right now. So how do you outsmart a brain that's both lazy and overconfident? Simple. You make it work harder. Start by asking better questions. Next time someone presents a strong opinion or argument, don't just nod along. Ask yourself, what proof do I really have that this is true? What's the other side of this? Am I buying into this because it's comforting or because it's actually right? Most people don't do this. Most people would rather feel certain than be correct. But those who can move beyond that need for certainty. They don't just think smarter, they win at life. Chapter 3. Why most people are easy to manipulate. Let's not sugarcoat this. Most people are shockingly easy to influence. And if you're thinking, I'm not one of them, that actually makes you more vulnerable, not less. Think about it. Have you ever seen a flashy commercial and suddenly craved a burger, even though you weren't even hungry? That's manipulation. Have you ever read a bold headline and instantly made up your mind about the story, without even checking the full facts? Have you ever formed an opinion just after reading a headline, without even looking at the full article? That's manipulation. Have you ever felt drawn to someone just because they made eye contact and smiled at you? Guess what? That's manipulation too. Now, before you panic and think you're some mind-controlled puppet, let's clear something up. Manipulation isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's just simple persuasion. The real problem isn't that people influence you. It's that you often don't even notice when it's happening. Here's how it works. Your brain is wired to. Your brain craves simplicity. It prefers things that are easy to understand, familiar, and emotionally charged. That's why headlines use fear to grab your attention. It's why politicians repeat slogans until they start sounding like undeniable truths. It's why confidence often trumps actual competence. So how do you fight back against manipulation? You need to recognize when someone is playing on your emotions. Next time you feel a powerful emotional response, anger, fear, excitement, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, who stands to gain from me feeling this way? What solid evidence do I actually have? Would I still believe this if it were coming from someone else? Here's the truth. Most people don't ask these important questions. They simply react, and the faster someone reacts, the easier they are to control. But the ones who take a moment to think before responding, they become unpredictable. They can't be easily played. Now, if you think that's powerful, just wait until you learn how to use this insight against those who try to manipulate you. That's exactly what we'll dive into next. Chapter 4. The hidden battle between emotion and logic. Ever had a moment when you knew you shouldn't do something but did it anyway? Ever had a moment when you knew you shouldn't do something but did it anyway? You promised yourself you'd stay calm during an argument, but the second they rolled their eyes, it was over. You swore you wouldn't buy anything unnecessary, yet somehow that limited time sale was impossible to resist. That's because, despite what we like to believe, logic doesn't take the lead, emotion does. And if you don't understand how emotions take over your thinking, you're not making rational decisions. You're making emotional ones that simply feel logical. Here's how it works. Your brain. Your brain processes emotions faster than logic. That's why fear makes you jump before you've even figured out what scared you. It's why anger makes you snap before you've had time to think about what you're about to say. Your logical brain is playing catch-up, trying to justify what your emotions have already decided. And here's the worst part. Your emotions aren't always based on reality. They're influenced by past experiences, subconscious biases, and even things as random as whether you got enough sleep. That means if you don't take a second to question them, you could be making life-altering decisions based on nothing but a mood swing. So, how do you stop your emotions from running your life? Simple. Create distance between feeling and action. When you feel a strong emotion, pause. Ask yourself, is this emotion based on facts or is it just my reaction? The more you question, the less control your emotions have over you. And once you master that, you become the kind of person who thinks before acting, while everyone else is just reacting. Chapter 5. The Echo Chamber. Notice how your social media feed seems to align perfectly with your views. How every post, article, and comment section feels like it's confirming what you already believe. That's not by chance. It's an echo chamber. And if you're not careful, it can trap you in a world where you only see one side of the truth. Here's how it works. Your brain craves agreement. It feels good to be right. That's why people tend to gravitate toward news sources that align with their beliefs. It's why your algorithm on platforms like Facebook or Twitter keeps showing you posts that echo your opinions. It feeds you content that matches your opinions. It's why debates online almost never change anyone's mind, because most people aren't listening. They're just waiting for their turn to speak. But here's the danger. If you never expose yourself to differing ideas, your thinking grows weaker, not stronger. You start confusing repetition with truth. You become more confident in your beliefs, but less informed. And that makes you an easy target for manipulation. The solution? Break free from your own echo chamber. Read sources that challenge your beliefs. Follow people whose opinions you don't agree with. Force yourself to consider the other side, not to change your mind, but to sharpen it. The strongest thinkers aren't the ones who cling to their ideas. They're the ones who test them constantly. Imagine you're in a detective movie, interrogating a suspect. You don't just ask, "Did you do it?" Because obviously, they'll say no. You dig deeper. You ask questions that uncover what they're trying to hide. That's how critical thinking works. It's not about having the right answers is important, but it's the ability to ask the right questions that really counts. Most people ask weak questions. Is this true? Is a weak question because if you already want to believe something, you'll find a way to justify it. A stronger question is, what evidence would prove me wrong? That forces your brain to consider the possibility that you could be wrong, and that makes your thinking stronger. Here's another one. Instead of asking, "Do I like this idea?" ask, "Who benefits from me believing this?" Because guess what? If an idea is being pushed hard by media, by businesses, influencers, there's probably someone making money or gaining power from it. And once you see that, you stop being easy to fool. But here's the real game changer. If you want to level up your thinking fast, start asking, "How do I know this?" Most people can't answer that. They just repeat what they've heard, what feels right, what aligns with their beliefs. But when you start asking why you believe what you do, you force yourself to think deeper. And thinking deeper, that's what separates people who truly know from those who just ever been absolutely sure about something, only to later find out you were completely wrong. Maybe you swore you locked the door, but it was wide open when you got back. Maybe you vividly remember a conversation, but the other person says it never happened. Or maybe you've believed in a fact for years, only to discover it was total nonsense. That's because your brain isn't a perfect recording device. It edits reality. It fills in gaps. It distorts. Memories shift to fit your current beliefs. And worst of all, it does all of this without telling you. Here's one of the biggest ways your brain deceives you. Confirmation bias. This is the tendency to notice and remember information that supports what you already believe, while ignoring or dismissing anything that contradicts it. Ever notice how, when you're convinced something is true, you start seeing proof of it everywhere? That's not reality shifting. It's just your brain filtering information to fit your existing worldview. Then there's the illusion of truth effect. If you hear a lie often enough, your brain begins treating it as truth, even if you knew it was false at first. That's why propaganda works. It's why misinformation spreads so easily. And it's why most people hold on to beliefs based more on repetition than actual facts. So, how do you fight back? You must actively question everything, especially the things you're most sure of. Whenever you catch yourself thinking, "I just know this is true," ask yourself, "Do I really know this for sure?" Think intelligence protects you from bad decisions. Think again. Some of the worst decisions in history Business failures, political disasters, financial crashes were made by highly intelligent people. Why? Because intelligence alone doesn't guarantee good thinking. In fact, sometimes it makes it worse. Here's how. What happens is this. Intelligent people are usually better at arguing their point, but that doesn't mean their point is correct. It just means they can rationalize bad decisions more convincingly. If they want something to be true, they'll find ways to justify it, even when the logic is shaky. Then there's overconfidence bias. The smarter someone is, the more likely they are to trust their own judgment, even when they shouldn't. They assume they must be right because they've been right so many times before. But that's exactly how they get something. Play devil's advocate against your own beliefs. Seek out criticism, not just praise. Because the moment you think you're too smart to make bad decisions, that's the moment you start making them. You like to think you're a free thinker, right? That your opinions are yours, shaped by reason and evidence. But what if I told you that most of what you believe, your opinions, your values, even your sense of self, has been given to you? That the way you see the world isn't actually based on independent thinking, but on programming you've absorbed your entire life. Sounds crazy, right? But let's break it down. From the moment you were born, you've been surrounded by influences shaping your mind. Your parents, your culture, your education, the media you consume. If you grew up in a different country, you'd probably have completely different opinions on politics, religion, or success. If you were raised in a different household, you'd likely have different fears, values, and habits. So how much of your thinking is truly yours? Here's an even scarier thought. Society doesn't want you to think critically. Governments, corporations, and media outlets all benefit when people follow the herd instead of questioning things. Why? Because independent thinkers are harder to control. They don't just accept authority, they challenge it. They don't just follow trends, they question why those trends exist. And they don't just consume information, they analyze it. So if you want to truly think for yourself, you have to start by questioning where your beliefs come from. Ask yourself, do I ever made a decision in the heat of the moment, only to regret it later? Maybe you sent a text you shouldn't have. Maybe you quit something too soon. Maybe you let your emotions push you into a bad choice that logic would have never approved. That's because, in the moment, emotions feel powerful, but critical thinking isn't about what feels right. It's about what is right. So how do you stop emotions from hijacking your thinking? Simple. Pause before making any big decision. Step back and let the emotions settle. Ask yourself, if I were completely calm, would I still make this choice? If the answer is no, then you know the emotion is driving the decision, not logic. And here's the real kicker. Emotions aren't the enemy. They're just unreliable narrators. The trick isn't to suppress them, it's to recognize them. When emotions are steering the wheel, take back control before they drive you off a cliff. Most people think they're thinking, but in reality, they're just reacting. They consume information without questioning it. They accept opinions without analyzing them. They let the world tell them what to think without even realizing it. And that's exactly what society wants. Passive thinkers are easy to control. They buy into trends without questioning them. They follow rules without asking if they should. It makes sense. They accept whatever they're told because thinking for themselves is just too much work. But here's the dangerous part. Passive thinking isn't just about being uninformed. It's about being manipulated. Every single day, you're bombarded with messages designed to shape your thoughts. Advertisers want you to believe you need their product. Politicians want you to believe their version of the truth. Social media algorithms want you to think exactly like the people around you. And if you're not actively questioning what you see, hear, and believe, you're being controlled, consumed, and you're being programmed without even knowing it. The cost: you lose control over your own mind. You stop thinking for yourself. You let others decide your beliefs, your opinions, and even your choices. But the second you wake up, the second you start questioning everything, you take that power back. Because critical thinkers don't just accept information. They challenge it. They analyze it. They decide for themselves. And that's what makes them dangerous to anyone who benefits from a passive, obedient mind. Your brain is lazy. No offense, but it is. It constantly looks for shortcuts to save energy. And while that's fine for basic survival, it's terrible for critical thinking. Take stereotypes, for example. They exist because your brain wants to categorize things quickly. It doesn't want to analyze every single person, situation, or idea from scratch. So instead, it takes the easy route. It generalizes, it assumes, it jumps to conclusions, and that's where the problems begin. Then, there are those mental shortcuts that help you make decisions quickly. Sounds useful, right? Except these shortcuts often lead to terrible choices, like assuming someone is right just because they're confident, or trusting information just because it comes from an authority figure. Making decisions based on gut feelings rather than actual evidence. The problem is, your brain loves these shortcuts. It makes you feel like you're thinking, but really, you're just relying on pre-programmed habits. So how do you break free? Start by, whenever you catch yourself making a snap judgment, pause. Ask yourself, am I thinking or am I just assuming? Challenge your first impression. Force your brain to take the longer, harder path, the one that actually leads to the truth. Because at the end of the day, real thinking isn't fast. It's slow, messy, and uncomfortable, but it's also the only way to see reality clearly. And once you start doing that, you stop being led by another person, running on autopilot, and start actually thinking. Your brain is a liar. It twists reality, filters out inconvenient facts, and rewrites history to make you feel better. It tells you you're right, even when you're dead wrong. It convinces you that what you want to be true must be true. Ever noticed how, after an argument, your brain conveniently remembers only the things that make you look good? Or how, when you make a mistake, your brain immediately finds excuses instead of admitting fault? That's not an accident. That's your mind protecting you. It hates being wrong. It hates discomfort. So, instead of facing the truth, it rewrites it. This is called confirmation bias, the tendency to seek out and believe information that supports what you already think, while ignoring anything that challenges it. It's why people get stuck in echo chambers. It's why conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. It's why even the smartest people can believe the dumbest things. And here's the scary part. The smarter you are, the worse this can be. Because intelligence, think you're immune to manipulation. Think again. Every single day, someone is hacking your mind. Advertisers. They all know exactly how to push your buttons and make you believe things that aren't true. Politicians, influencers, the media, they all know exactly how to get to you. And if you're not actively resisting it, you're being controlled without even realizing it. Take social media, for example. You think you're just scrolling mindlessly, but every post is handpicked to influence you. The algorithm understands what triggers your emotions. It knows what sparks your anger, what makes you click, and how to keep you glued to the screen for hours. What's even scarier is that it's not personal. It's just business. Then there's the news. They don't report stories based on what's important. They focus on stories that will stir up the strongest reactions: fear, outrage, division. Why? Because emotional people are easier to manipulate. When you're scared, you're desperate for solutions. When you're angry, you're searching for someone to blame. And in both cases, you're more likely to act without thinking. So how do you fight back? Start by recognizing when you're being emotionally triggered. Whenever you feel an intense emotional reaction, whether it's rage, fear, or excitement, pause. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Who benefits from my reaction? When you become aware of manipulation, it loses its power over you. In a world that profits from keeping you in the dark, the most dangerous thing you can do is see things clearly. Chapter 15, The Hidden Power of Asking Better Questions. Most people don't think critically because they don't know how to ask the right questions. They accept information at face value, assuming everything they hear must be true, and they never take the time to dig deeper. But every great thinker, every innovator, every genius throughout history shared one thing. What they all had in common was that they questioned everything. Why is this the truth? Who benefits from this idea? What's the evidence against this? How could I be wrong? These aren't just random questions. They are weapons. They force reality to reveal itself. They cut through lies, illusions, and manipulations. Look at history. Every major breakthrough, every revolution, every shift in human progress started with a single question. What if we're wrong? But most people are afraid to ask these questions. They don't want to challenge authority. They don't want to feel foolish. They don't want to admit they might be wrong, so they stay quiet. They accept, they obey. But not you, not anymore. If you want to master critical thinking, you have to make questioning a habit. Whenever you hear something, whether it's from the news, a friend, or even your own thoughts, don't just accept it. Interrogate it. Because the truth doesn't come from blindly believing what you're told. It comes from daring to ask what no one else will. Conclusion: you've just unlocked a secret that most people will never even realize. Your mind is both your greatest weapon and your biggest enemy. Every day, you're surrounded by manipulation, bias, and misinformation. But now, you know the traps. You can see the illusions, and that puts you ahead of 99% of people. Critical thinking isn't just a skill, it's a survival tool. It's what separates those who follow from those who lead, those who get played from those who win the game. And now, you're one of the few who can see through the noise. But here's the real question. What will you do with this power? Will you start questioning everything? Will you challenge your own beliefs? Will you refuse to be manipulated? Because knowing isn't enough. Action is what makes the difference. If you're ready to take your thinking to the next level, there's more to explore. Watch our next video on how to destroy mental biases and make smarter decisions faster. Because in a world full of distractions and deception, only the sharpest minds truly thrive.